If you've been carrying the quiet belief that something inside you got broken a long time ago, that other people came out of childhood whole and you came out with a crack running through the middle, I want you to know this. You're not damaged. You're adapted, and the very things you call your flaws were once the most intelligent moves a frightened young person ever made. We use the word damaged, the way we talk about a dropped phone, a crack in the screen, a part that no longer works, something that should have stayed intact and didn't. And when you apply that word to a person, to yourself, it carries a quiet verdict underneath it. It says you are less than you were meant to be. It says repair, if it comes at all, will only ever get you back to somehow flawed. But here's the thing I want to sit with for a moment. That isn't actually how a nervous system works. A person isn't a phone that got dropped. A person is something that learned. Let me tell you about someone. I'll call him Daniel. Daniel grew up in a house where the mood could turn in a heartbeat, where you never quite knew which version of the people you loved was going to walk through the door. So Daniel got good at something. He got extraordinarily good at reading a room. He could tell from the sound of a key in a lock what kind of evening was coming. He learned to make himself small, to anticipate, to soothe other people before the storm arrived. And 30 years later, Daniel sat in a chair across from me and listed those same traits as evidence that he was broken. "I'm too vigilant," he said. "I can't relax. I read danger into everything. I shrink myself around other people." He'd spent his whole adult life believing these were defects in his wiring. What he had never once considered was that every single one of them had, at one time, kept him safe. That's the part we almost always miss. The traits we're most ashamed of were rarely random malfunctions. They were solutions. Brilliant, costly, life-saving solutions to a situation a child should never have had to solve. The hypervigilance that exhausts you now once meant you saw the danger coming. The people-pleasing that drains you now once brought you safety in a house where love was conditional. The numbness that worries you now was once the only way a small body could survive something too big to feel. You didn't break. You adapted. And you adapted so well that the adaptation outlived the danger it was built for. That's the real ache of it. Not that you're damaged, but that you're still running brilliant software for a threat that ended years ago. There's real science under this. The psychiatrist Bruce Perry, who has spent decades studying how early experience shapes the developing brain, describes the brain as use-dependent. What that means in plain language is that the brain literally builds itself around what it repeatedly experiences. A child raised in unpredictability doesn't develop a faulty stress system. They develop a finely tuned one, calibrated exactly to the world they were given. The system isn't broken. It's doing precisely what it was shaped to do. The trouble is only this. It was shaped for a world you no longer live in. And that reframe changes everything about what healing even means. If you're damaged, healing is repair, fixing a broken part, getting back to baseline. But if you're adapted, healing is something far gentler and far more respectful. It's updating. It's letting a nervous system that learned to survive one world, slowly, safely, discover that it now lives in a different one. So here are 3 things I want you to understand about what's really happening inside you. First, your symptoms are not evidence of weakness. They are evidence of how hard you worked to survive. Every coping mechanism you're ashamed of was a small act of genius performed by someone who had no other options. You can thank a thing for saving you and still decide you no longer need it. Second, adaptation can be readapted. A brain that learned to fear can learn to trust, because the same use-dependent quality that wrote the original pattern is still running. The system that adapted to danger can, with time and safety and repetition, adapt to peace. You are not stuck with the version of you that the past required. Third, the goal was never to become someone undamaged. The goal is to become someone who understands why they are, and meets that person with tenderness instead of contempt. The crack you thought ran through your middle isn't a fracture. It's a seam, the place where you were put back together by your own intelligence, over and over, for years. Hermann Hesse once wrote that some of us think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes it is letting go. He understood that strength isn't the absence of wounds. It's the slow, brave willingness to loosen your grip on the very things that once kept you alive, now that the danger has passed. So stop calling yourself broken. You were never a dropped thing that shattered. You were a living thing that learned, in the only way it could, how to survive what it was handed. That isn't damage. That's the most ordinary and astonishing kind of resilience there is. And the same self that adapted to survive can now, gently, begin to adapt to life.